There are veterans walking around right now who are owed years of back pay, and they have no idea, because the reason has nothing to do with their rating and everything to do with a Supreme Court ruling most of them have never even heard about. Last June, the highest court in the country looked at how the government had been paying a certain kind of compensation to disabled veterans. And every single justice, all 9 of them unanimous, no disagreement at all, said the government had been doing it wrong for years and shorting veterans out of money they had already earned. Not a close call, not a split decision, all 9. And because of that ruling, a huge number of retired veterans are now owed back pay that was capped, cut off, and quietly kept from them. In some cases, tens of thousands of dollars, and all of it completely tax-free. Today, I am going to walk you through exactly what the court decided, how to tell if it happened to you, and the exact steps to take right now to claim what you are owed. My name is Frank Sutherland. I am a veteran, and I dig through these rulings and the fine print, so you do not have to. I am not here to hype you up or scare you. I am here to read what the court actually said and put it in plain English, because this one is real. It came straight from the Supreme Court of the United States, and most veterans have never heard a single word about it. So, let me start with the money this is all about, because the name of it sounds like alphabet soup until you see what it really means for your wallet. It is called Combat-Related Special Compensation, or CRSC, and to understand why it matters, you have to understand something the government does that shocks a lot of veterans the first time they run into it. When you serve long enough to retire from the military, you earn retirement pay separately. If you have service-connected disabilities, the VA pays you disability compensation. You would think you simply get both because you earned both 2 different ways. But for a long time, the law did not let you. For every dollar the VA paid you in disability, the government took $1 away from your military retirement. They called it an offset. In plain English, they made you fund your own disability check out of the retirement you already earned. Veterans were furious about it for years, and they were right to be. So, Congress created a fix, and CRSC is one half of that fix. If your disabilities are combat-related, and that covers a lot more than people think, things like injuries, from training exercises, from hazardous duty, from being in a combat zone, from the wear and tear of carrying a rifle in a ruck for 20 years, then CRSC pays that offset money back to you. And here is the part that makes it so valuable, because it is tied to combat. That money comes to you tax-free. It is some of the best compensation in the entire system, and a lot of retirees who qualify for it either never applied or applied late because nobody ever told them it existed. And that late part is exactly where the government quietly went wrong and where your money may be sitting right now. Here's what was happening. Say a veteran retired and they were eligible for CRSC from the day they walked out the gate, but they did not find out about it until years later. Maybe a buddy mentioned it, maybe a VSO finally caught it. So they apply and they get approved, and the branch says, yes, you qualified for this TA. And then comes the gut punch. Instead of paying that veteran back to the day they were actually eligible, the government drew a line at 6 years. They said, we will only pay you the last 6 years of what you were owed and everything before that. No matter how far back your eligibility really went, we are keeping. They leaned on an old dusty law called the Barring Act, a general 6-year deadline written for ordinary government claims, and they slapped it on top of combat-disabled veterans' compensation, like it belonged there. Think about what that does to a real person. Picture a veteran who medically retired back in 2006 because of a combat-related condition. He was eligible for this tax-free compensation from that very day. But like a lot of guys, he had no clue it existed. He is dealing with his health, with his family, with putting his life back together. Years go by. Finally, around 2016, someone tells him about CRSC, and he files. He gets approved, and then the branch tells him, we will pay you back to 2010, 6 years. And that is it. The 4 years before that, 2006 to 2010, 4 years of tax-free money, he was legally owed, just gone, erased. Not because he did anything wrong, not because he was not eligible, purely because the government decided a 6-year clock applied, and he was not in a position to argue with the Department of Defense. That is not a small clerical thing. Depending on a veteran's rating and his retired pay, 4 extra years of CRSC can be tens of thousands of dollars, and this was not one unlucky guy. This was the standard practice applied to veteran after veteran year after year. That is the engine behind the back pay we are talking about today. It is not a bonus. It is money that was always theirs, that the government simply refused to pay past an arbitrary line. Now here is where it turns from a horror story into something you can actually act on. And it comes down to one Marine, The veteran whose name is on this case is a man named Simon Soto. He was a Marine, medically retired for a combat-related condition. And when he finally applied for his CRSC, he got the same treatment everyone else did. 6 years and not a day more. But instead of accepting it, he and his lawyers took the government to court, and they argued something simple. That old 6-year Bearing Act was never meant to apply to this kind of veterans' compensation at all. The government fought it. They fought it all the way up. And on June 12th of last year, the Supreme Court of the United States ruled unanimously in favor of the veteran. Every justice agreed. They said the 6-year cap does not belong on CRSC. The government had been wrong, and it had been wrong for years. Let me explain why that word unanimous matters so much to you. The Supreme Court splits on almost everything. 5-4, 6-3, big arguments, dissents, the whole thing. When all 9 justices appointed by presidents from both parties look at the same question, and every last one of them says, the veteran is right and the government is wrong. That is about as close to a settled no argument. This is final answer as exists in American law. This is not a rumor floating around a Facebook group. This is not some guy on the internet promising you a check. This is the highest court in the land telling the Defense Department, pay these veterans what you owe them, going back to when they were actually eligible, not just the last 6 years. So now the real question, the one every single one of you is doing math on in your head, how much money are we actually talking about? And I want to be very careful and very honest here, because this is exactly the kind of situation where bad actors will lie to you. Nobody can promise you a specific number, because it depends on your retirement, your rating, and how far back your eligibility really goes. But I can tell you why the numbers are potentially so large. Every year that was wrongly chopped off by that 6-year cap is a year of tax-free compensation that should now be back on the table. For a veteran who was eligible 10, 15, even 20 years before they applied, that is not a few hundred. That is years of monthly payments stacked up. And for many veterans, it lands somewhere from several thousand into the tens of thousands. The longer the gap between when you were eligible and when you actually got paid, the bigger the check the government has been sitting on. Now, let me tell you what is happening on the government side right now, because this is the part that decides whether you get your money quickly or get left behind. After the ruling, the Defense Department and the pay center that actually cuts these checks, that is DFAS, the Defense Finance and Accounting Service have to go back and rework how they handle this. They are drafting the guidance to apply the decision, both going forward for new claims and backward for the veterans who already got capped. In plain terms, the system that shorted you is now the system that has to make it right. But here's what I have learned watching how these things go. The veterans who get made whole fastest are almost never the ones who sit back and wait for the government to find them. They are the ones who get their paperwork in order now, get on the record, and make sure they are counted. The ones who wait quietly are the ones who fall through the cracks. And I want to be straight with you, because I never want to oversell. This does not mean a check automatically lands in your mailbox tomorrow. It means the unfair cap that was taking your money is gone, and the door to the rest of your back pay is now open. Some veterans are going to see life-changing amounts. Some will see less, depending on their situation. But the entire point is that the money you were always owed is finally claimable instead of being held back by a deadline that the Supreme Court just threw out. So the real question becomes, how do you know if this is you? Let me give you the honest checklist. First, are you a military retiree, either a regular retirement or a medical retirement for your disabilities? Second, do you have disabilities that are combat-related, which again is broader than people assume and includes a lot of training and hazardous duty injuries, not just being shot at? Third, and this is the big one, did you ever get approved for CRSC and notice that they only paid you back a handful of years when you were really eligible long before that? If you applied late year, if there was a long stretch between when you retired and when you actually started getting CRSC, there is a real chance you got capped and a real chance the government owes you the years they cut off. And even if you have never applied for CRSC at all and you are a retiree with combat-related disabilities, this is your sign to find out what you have been missing this whole time. Now here is exactly what to do about it step by step. And I want you to listen closely, because the difference between the veterans who get every dollar and the veterans who miss out is going to come down to who takes action right now. First, pull your own records. You want your CRSC decision and your payment history from your branch of service and from DFAS, so you can see what period they actually paid you and compare it to when you were really eligible. If there is a gap, that gap is your back pay. Second, if you have never applied or you suspect you were eligible earlier than you filed, get your application and your effective date squared away, because the earlier your real eligibility date, the more they owe you. Third, and I cannot say this strongly enough, get free, legitimate help. An accredited veteran service officer, a VSOE, can help you with this at no cost to you. Your VSO does this for free. That is what they are there for. You do not need to navigate the Defense Department and DFAS by yourself. And now the warning, because I would be doing you a disservice if I did not say this plainly. Whenever there is a pot of money like this with veterans' names on it, the predators come out of the woodwork, you are going to start seeing people online and maybe even calls to your phone claiming they can get you your CRSC back faster if you just pay them a fee up front or hand over your banking information or sign something today. Do not do it. You do not have to pay anybody up front to claim money that is already yours. The real help, your VSO, your branch, the official DFAS process does not work that way. Anyone demanding a fee to unlock money the Supreme Court already said is yours is running a scam. Protect yourself and protect the veterans around you, because the whole point of this ruling was to stop the government from keeping what you earned. Do not turn around and hand it to a con artist. Instead, I want to take 1 second here because so many of you have asked me to put the moves I cover on this channel into one place in plain English, so you are not trying to remember some video when you actually need it. So I did. It is called the Veterans Benefits Playbook. It walks through how programs like CRSC and concurrent receipt actually work, how to request and read your pay records, how effective dates decide your back pay, how to spot the claims and the money you may be owed, and the other moves that get you every dollar the government owes you, step-by-step written, so it is easy to follow if you want it. The link is in the description below. It is the simplest way I know to make sure a mistake like the 6-year cap never quietly costs you again. So let me bring this all together, because I do not want you to walk away with just a story. I want you to walk away knowing what to do. For years, the government took an old 6-year deadline and used it to short combat disabled retirees out of the tax-free compensation they had already earned, keeping everything past that 6-year line. Last June, the Supreme Court of the United States ruled unanimously that the cap was wrong and has to go. That means a huge number of retired veterans are now owed back pay that was being held back from them. And the longer the gap between when you were eligible and when you got paid, the bigger that number can be. Your job right now is simple. Pull your CS, C, and D FAS payment records and look for the years they cut off. If you never applied and you are a retiree with combat-related disabilities, find out what you have been missing and get free. Real help from an accredited VSO. And never pay a stranger upfront to claim money that is already yours. This is information, not legal advice for your specific case. So talk to an accredited VSO or a veteran's attorney before you act on your own situation. But do not sit on this. The veterans who pay attention are the ones who get made whole. If this helped you, do me one favor and send it to another veteran, especially any retiree. You know, because there are a lot of people this happened to who still have no idea the Supreme Court just opened this door for them. Subscribe, because I track exactly this kind of thing. So you do not have